Hello and welcome. My name is Valerie Steffen. I'm part of the training team here at Bright, and I want to welcome you to the Bright Summer Search Updates webinar. I'm really excited to be sharing with you Bright's updates to search, maps, contacts, email, and more. These new features and requested updates became live in the system on June 22nd, and they're really designed to overall improve your experience in search overall. So on the agenda today, we're going to give you a tour of what your clients are going to see, what you as a subscriber to Bright will experience, and then at the very end, we're going to give you a special sneak peek of another enhancement that's coming a little later this year. So let's get started with what your clients are going to notice. You may not always notice what your clients are receiving via email unless you're opening maybe carbon copies you're sending yourself. But what you see here is a more modern and mobile-friendly email, because we know that your clients may be opening the messages they're receiving from you on maybe their smartphone or their tablet, something with a smaller screen size. So these messages have been updated to include abbreviations of beds, baths, and square footage, because we know presentation and client relationships are key to you. So we'd encourage you to communicate about this change to your client. We know with all of us being a little more vigilant and sensitive about internet security, any change should be communicated out of an abundance of caution. And just keep in mind that there may be some slight differences on how these emails render based on the email platform that your client is using. But overall, you'll see it's a more consistent typeface, a little more modern font is used throughout the email. I will mention that if you do happen to have a custom email signature set up that uses custom fonts, those custom fonts aren't going to change. It's just the font that's included automatically through your auto email of your listings. We also made the call to action, so things like the links to the client portal more prominent here. So nothing major, but just so you're aware. Next, let's talk about what things have changed on your side. And we're going to touch on these kind of throughout the pages or sections of Bright that they touch. A few of them, such as updated icons, tooltips, and fonts, will apply sort of across, criteria, map, and results. So we won't spend too long on them, but I just want to make sure that you're aware of those changes. So if we're talking in terms of client relationships, a good place to start would be over at the Concierge map. So I'm just going to open up a Concierge settings that I have set up in the system. And if you are using the auto email feature, Concierge, then you're probably accustomed to seeing the approval screen where you review the matches that come back and either approve or reject them. Well, we've added, along with the results tab here at the top, a map tab. And that map tab is just going to be just what you use from a standard search, in that you'll have the access to the individual pins. You can click on them. You also have access to add layers if you choose to, maybe something like, school districts or flood zones. Again, just like you would on the standard search, just allowing you to have a little bit more information gathering ability and perspective when you're deciding to approve or reject a match. Also related to your client management or contact management, we've added in the contacts a few new changes. The contact list itself, this default one-line view that you're accustomed to seeing, has gotten a little more modern and streamlined look to it. The icons have been updated. They're still pretty recognizable or similar. It's more or less just the sort of fashion or overall look of them has been updated a bit. I would mention that there is a new toggle switch here, where if you prefer more of a contacts or cards view, you can switch back and forth between those two preferences for yourself. All of the functionality has remained the same here. There have just been a few items have been tucked up at the top of the page. So we have a bulk actions icon up here in the top left where we've tucked the active, set inactive, export and delete functions up there. And we've tucked the import option under the add button in the top right hand side of the screen. We've also changed the workflow a little bit in the system previous to the 22nd. If you wanted to edit or view options, you would just click on the name, and you can still click on the name, but instead of it opening sort of accordion style right on the same page, instead we're taking you over to a details view of your contacts and all the sort of associated items, whether it's activity, it's favorites, it's possibilities, it's discards, it's notes, auto email, carts, CMA, sent email, searches, portal searches, and reverse prospect contacts all are on this details view now. So hopefully it'll just make it a little bit easier to have this consolidated view if you need to make any edits or check on any information regarding your contacts. Now, if it's edits to your own settings or account that you need to do, you will still go up to your login name, come to account and settings, and then you'll have all the different options when it comes to your account and settings individual to you within Bright. Now, the MLS settings is where you make updates to things like your personal branding and options, team settings if you're a member of a team. You can also do some customization when it comes to defaults for consumer notices, exports, hot sheets, etc. And this page as well has had an update to the icons and just the presentation of the information as it appears here. We're hoping this will make it easier to set up or update your search and client portal settings. Now, let's head over and take a look at the search updates. So I'm going to just open up a residential sale where I can point out these changes to you. So the first you'll notice is under the status section of the page where we've added a select all and a select none link. So if you want an all or none option when it comes to the statuses, you can just with one click set that up. You'll notice select all also fills in the default as far as the time frames, and you can always uncheck or change or overwrite these options if you choose to. Now the next change that you'll notice is the addition of this kick out field. And of course, the kick out field applies to active under contract listings that would have a kick out clause either added or not included in the agreement of sale. And you'll have the option to choose yes or no to either include or exclude those options. The nice feature about that is if you are choosing the kick out clause to include that field, you can also continue to search on other statuses like active at the same time if you would like to. Just make sure that if you do change your mind and decide to clear out that field, that like any of the other yes/no drop-downs, you set that to blank to completely exclude that information then, should you change your mind and not want to use that field any longer. So those are the major changes on this page. I'll also mention in the top right-hand corner, we've made a tweak to recent searches. We've just made the mobile presentation, or the way this will interact if you happen to be working on a smaller device, making it work a little more optimized for that smaller screen. It opens from the right now. It has clearer and larger definitions. So if I want to return to the results from a previous recent search, I can simply click on that individual item And if I want to close the feature, I can just use the arrow in order to do so. As I mentioned previously, we have more updates to icons. So you'll notice the tabs at the top of the page, as well as the lookup icons, the help icons, which are the little question mark you see there, as well as the icons that appear in the button bar at the bottom of the page. Again, just have a more modern presentation here. So not huge changes, but again, those that are worth noting. I'll also note that on the results statistics report, if you are someone who uses that report, we've also updated icons there as well. And as we go through the system and we hover, you will notice that the little tooltip or help that you see that identifies icons, those have a new look as well, hopefully making them clearer and easier to read. And again, they will always identify what that icon is, what you'll accomplish by clicking on it. Those new icons are here on our map tab as well as a few new functions here. And probably the first one that you'll notice is that the map now covers the whole width of the browser. So you're taking up all the available space. There's more map for you to use. And that's something that was a very frequent request. So we're happy to be able to accommodate that. Something else that you'll notice new on the page is if you are someone who uses the drive time search. There's a new field on the drive time search. And if you're not familiar with this feature, it's pretty straightforward to use. So you can enter a specific address. And I'm just gonna pop one in here. You could also use a landmark or a more general address like a city and state. You indicate whether it's driving to or from that location that you're interested in, what time of day you'd be doing that, the time frame you're willing to commute, and now the new feature here is the day of the week. So if there's, someone you're working with who maybe has a non-traditional schedule or is perhaps concerned about maybe shore traffic or Friday afternoon traffic, you can accommodate that search for them. And by adding this, it's going to draw on the page itself, on the map, what the confines of that search is. And if you happen to be someone who likes to do additional shapes, maybe a second drive time search, you can absolutely do that as well. And I'm just going to pull up a recent one that I've done, and we'll use our 5 p.m. commuter as our example here. And we're going to say they're concerned about that Friday afternoon commute. And this is great if you're working with a spouse or maybe someone who has two separate commute times that they're interested in. You'll notice it applied the second shape right on top for me. If I go back to the red dot, which was the center point there, you'll see my new option here is to include intersection only. And what that's going to do for me is clear out all those other listing matches that are not in the sweet spot, that overlap place where both of the map shapes intersect. So that's a really cool one that's been added as well. The third change that you'll see in this area in particular, I'm just going to use my plus to zoom in a little closer, and I'm going to want to zoom until I see my parcel layer. And that's that gray overlay that you see here that shows the individual tax map or parcel for that area. And I'm going to go up to the layers icon, and a new heading has been added here, and that is MLS status. So what's great about this is that it's going to allow me, if maybe I want to investigate a little more closely about a neighborhood, what sprung to mind, my use case for this would be maybe I'm pulling comps or getting familiar ahead of a listing presentation with a particular area. I certainly want to see what listings come back as comps, and those are the pins that you see here, but maybe I also want to see through MLS status any neighboring activity in the area. And you'll notice that if I choose any of the off-market statuses, it's going to give me a time frame to include as well. So for instance, maybe I only want to take a look at what's closed in the past 6 months. And as I add that information, you'll notice that it's included these separate pins, look a little bit different than our listing pins, which are larger. And that's going to let me know what other MLS activity has happened. And of course, the colors correspond to the layers that you see there in the drop down. So I see my red are my closed, my yellow are my pending, my green are my active. And again, this is irrespective of the other criteria that I've added. Just lets me see what's happening in the area. And just like a standard listing pin, I can click to get a little bit more information on those other properties. So that's a great way to be informed if you're going into a listing presentation. You're going to present the comps and, your persuasive argument for a listing price, but this helps you prevent you from getting, say, blindsided if, you give your whole great presentation and then the homeowner says, well, what about, my neighbor across the street or the next street over? He told me he sold his house for X. You're not scrambling then to find that information. You have some awareness about other recent sales or other activity in the neighborhood. So just another good feature that's in there if you choose to use it. Now let's take a look at our final tab here, which is the results tab. And the results tab has had a new addition here. In the system, you have the ability, you had it previously and you still have it if you would like to do a multi-level sort. So right now I can see that it's sorted based on price, and it's price ascending order. If I want to change that, I can go to refine and I can select sort, and I can do as many level sort as I'd like just by selecting from the available fields, hitting add and moving them over in the system, hitting OK. But a little quicker option that I have is if I would like to add additional level sort, like maybe I want to sort by, say, let's say city. I can click on the city column heading and you'll notice it's added that as a sort label. So when I hover, it tells me that is now my primary sort. And maybe I also want to sort by, say, bedrooms. And when I click on that and then hover, you see now that is my primary sort. So I've got a primary, I've got a secondary, and I've got a tertiary sort set up just by clicking on the headings. And you'll see that hover help tells me the sort order it is. And whatever the most recent heading is that you've clicked on, that will be set up as your primary. And if you want to change, say, from descending to ascending order, you can click on the little arrow and that'll flip that sort for you. All right, so one other quick addition based on requests that we have here is that the system, if you are moving between displays, is now going to remember where you were last in your scrolling. So my example here would be, maybe I'm looking at hot sheet results, or maybe I'm looking, like in this example, where I have 8 pages of results, and I'm just kind of scrolling along, and every time I see one that I like the looks of, maybe I'm clicking on the MLS number so that I can look at the full report and kind of scan through and get a feel for it. But then I use the Agent One Line Display link to go back. Now in the previous system, it would just kind of pop you wherever in the list. And the nice thing is that this now is going to recall where you were. So it's not taking me all the way back to page 1. It's not dropping me at the very top of the page. It's remembering where I was. And just a reminder, if you didn't catch that, this is the one I just looked at. So I'm returning on the page to where I was previously. So again, that was a frequent request. So another thing that hopefully is going to make just things a little more efficient in your daily process. So these are the changes that came about as of the 22nd. Let's take a look now at that sneak preview that I promised you. So what is next on the drawing board for coming enhancements? And this is going to be really a time-saving and accuracy boosting way to enter your listings. So I'm just going to go over to add and edit listings. And my disclaimer here, as I show this to you, is that this is in beta testing. This new feature is called Bright Listing Assistant. It's projected for release in the third quarter of this year. And my disclaimer is what I'm showing you may be tweaked, almost certainly will be tweaked based on the feedback that our beta testers give us, because they're already giving us some great tips and pointers, requests for how they think it could work better. So what you see here may not be, hard and fast what we released to you. In fact, likely won't be exactly what we released to you in the third quarter. But we want to give you a flavor and hopefully build some excitement about what's to come. So I selected that I will be entering a new listing. I'm just going to drop some additional information in here, just like I would for a standard listing, and I'll click next. Now I'm going to go ahead and enter the address of the property that I'm listing. And you notice it is suggesting properties for me as I enter my information. And when I have found the correct property, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Now, I will point out that there is an advanced search option, and that advanced search option is actually just going to take you to the screen as you see it now. So if you're having a little trouble finding the listing you're looking for, you can always go into that advanced search option and go back to the old way of doing things. And you do, of course, have an option to proceed without tax records. So for instance, if maybe you're entering a new construction property or a recently subdivided property and there is no tax record, you can start with a blank form just like you can in the current system. But we, of course, are going to strongly encourage you to use this new time-saving feature. So once I found the property that's correct, I'm going to select that option. It's going to search through the tax record for me, and then it will find the tax record as long as one exists, and then previous times that the property was listed. So I can pick the tax record and up to 3 other options. You may have a whole list of these if it's a property that's been listed multiple times. Probably, I would guess you would select the ones that are the most recent. Logically, I would assume those are the most likely to be accurate. And then you would click Proceed to Compare. Now, what's great about this is often when a listing agent is going to enter a listing, or maybe they're having an assistant or someone on their team does it for them, there's a lot of pre-work. So you often will, you'll pull the tax record, you might physically look up the previous listings and print them out. You might be somebody who uses the property profile sheet form and filling this all out manually on your own. Any one of these options is certainly doable. We're not, recreating the wheel here, but they are things that take a little bit of extra time. And what we've tried to do here is really streamline that process for you. So instead of you having to hit the public records, go out and look at these previous historical records of the listing in the MLS, we're trying to gather it all together on one screen for you and streamline that process. So what I'm looking at here is in the blue tab, my new listing that I'm creating, and then we have our tax record, and then we have the other two previous times the listing was in the system. At the very top of the page, you'll notice that it's calling out the conflicts. And some of them, you'll notice it has the little SYS. That just means the system assigns those. That's the default. Obviously, there's going to be a conflict in the MLS number because each one is separate. But the other things like types of financing, location data, the cross streets, any of this data that's been entered, if it's in conflict between the two, we're calling it out at the top for you to review. Now, if you want to, you'll notice at the very top, there's a link where you can say, hey, I just want to copy everything over from, say, the tax record, which is the one immediately to the right of my new listing. And that will, fill in all the applicable fields in my new listing. I can still go through and say, for instance, here where it says exclusions, this is not going to be an exclusion in my current listing, so I can use the X to clear it right out. Maybe I want to see the additional information. So maybe I want to see, it says here, it's a link. It says acceptable financing, conventional. It has a +2. If I click on that, it's going to show me what that data is. And I've already copied it over, so it's giving me the option to clear it out if I want to remove that. Now, if I wanted to see more, say, here in levels and rooms, what the data is included here, I can say use all this data instead of what I auto-filled from the tax record instead. Maybe this is more up to date. So you see, I've kept primarily most of the fields from the tax record, but I can on a case-by-case basis copy over individual fields, and whatever I clicked on most recently is going to overwrite the previous thing that I had auto-filled. So since I'm responsible for all of this data, regardless of the source, I'm going to want to go through and just take a look at it and see what's the most accurate. So for instance, here, my year built, which date is the most accurate? And again, on a case-by-case basis, I can move it over if I choose to. I can clear it out and I can always fill it in later if I want to at the full form. This is just giving me the opportunity to do as much of the autofill initially as I can, just to make the process as simple as possible for myself. And again, I can scroll down and review these things as I choose. Now, you will notice when we come down to the section that says photos and tours, documents, showing and open house information, all of these are blank. And if I click on it, it lets me know that there are no values in this section. Now, what you see or what's going to be included there is going to be dependent upon what your role or relationship was to the previous listings. So because none of these were my listing previously, these are all blank for me because I don't have access to someone else's photos. That would be copyrighted material. I don't have access to someone else's remarks or documents, etc. However, if one of these previous listings had been my listing, I will have content in there that I can copy over if I choose to. So if it was, this very endmost listing, that had been my listing, I uploaded the photos, then I'd be able to copy those over if I chose. But again, only if it was my listing previously. Now, when I'm done, I've reviewed my information, I'm satisfied, I can say add values to listing. It is checking out and locking that listing for editing. And right now it's rebuilding it, and it's gone ahead and let me know which fields I still need to fill out. I can go in and pop through this listing just like I would any other time and enter that data. And what we found so far in our beta testing is that this is a real time savings, up to 3 times faster than entering that data yourself as you do currently in the system. And it's really accuracy boosting as well, because it's doing that legwork of finding this data for you ahead of time. Of course, you'll still check it out on your own, but again, it's just streamlining the process for you. So I hope this has given you some anticipation about what's to come. Again, we're projecting this for release in Q3. Thank you guys so much for your attention today. We will make sure to make a recording of this event available to you. We'll email you a link to it tomorrow, and we'll make it available after the session on youtube.com/Bright MLS. If you have additional questions about the recent search updates, you can find more information at brightmls.com/search updates. Thanks so much and have a bright day.